cracks in the foundation. Cracks in the foundation.
At the heart of it is we want to teach kids to live in harmony with nature, to teach kids things that they're not going to learn in mainstream schools like morality, emotional intelligence, permaculture.
Some real life superheroes out there. I met a few. Heroes have been lost, not found. And here we are, in desperate need of one.
I was the thief, hands full of lies. Took what I wanted, no need for the why. Truth was a whisper, pain was a game, but the mirror don't crack without saying your name. Used to run the streets, my heart was as cold as the winter. Played the game for keeps, a sinner, born a sinner splinter. Now I rise up strong, no more living in the gutter. Found a light inside, no more living with the shutter. Watch me transform from the darkness to the dawn. All my past mistakes now are just lessons I've drawn. I'm the voice of pain, but now I'm here to preach the truth. From a rebel to a saint, I'm a soul in the booth. I'm rising from the ashes, turning on the right. Once a sinner in the night, now I'm shining bright. Too near death's behind me, one chance ahead. The day I chose kid was the day I played dead. I bled in the silence, I broke in the dark. The system, the cage, a cold metal spark. Two near deaths behind me, one chance ahead. The day I chose kid was the day I played dead. Peel back the layers, find the right. Dig through the trauma this world forgot. I wasn't poor, I was starved for truth. And it took a fall to remember my roots. I was defeated, but I'm not anymore. Can't crack me open right down to the core. Scratch, shut, shield, punch. This is the moment I finally wait. This is the voice of the one.
Yeah, so it was like G.I. Joes and Matchbox cars when I was like 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. 10, 11 probably in there too somewhere. But there was this, I never got caught. I guess store workers or security would see me and like not even think that I would be doing something like that because I was so little, But the first time I ever got caught, well, let me back up a little because it was a learned behavior though. Okay, it was a learned behavior. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I went with my father one time into a Woolworths, and I was probably at his age when I saw him do it.
Your father?
Yeah. He picked up a package of balloons off the shelf, and he never paid for them. But when we got back to the house, he had them. We made water balloons. Okay? And he was a detective. Okay, so
How do you do that?
I don't know. It's like such a petty thing, right? Maybe I didn't see it right. Maybe he did pay. You know what I mean? And at that age, right. I didn't see it. But anyway, so.
But you got the idea.
Maybe, because I played it back in my head, like where would like that kind of pattern of behavior come from? Because it wasn't like taught to me by my mother, and it wasn't like all my friends in school were going with me to stores so that I could see them doing it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. A lot of times it would be me and my cousin, but I'm pretty sure he was younger than me by about 3 years, 2 years. He was younger than me. So I'm pretty sure, and when I say cousin, he wasn't blood cousin. He was my mom's best friend's kid, so we were like cousins.
Right.
And, tragically, he ended up taking his own life after taking this girl kidnapped and all that. I was in jail when I saw it on the news broadcast. Yeah, I was in in my early 20s. I was incarcerated. I saw on the news screen him being hunted for, and I was like, holy crap, that's my mom's best friend's kid. You know, like he was like a cousin to me. Like I went to Disney on ice and down the shore, weekends down the shore, weeks down the shore, you know, all that kind of shit. Anyway, long story short with that, he forced his girlfriend to go to the ATM at gunpoint to take money out so he can continue to get high. This was in his family deep, though, this drug shit. His brother actually stole his mother's purse from her while she was on her deathbed from leukemia. Yeah, like the last time he ever saw his mom, he snatched her fucking wallet out of her purse and ran out of the house. Yeah, that's really like, could you imagine? That was my mom's best friend. She was dying from leukemia. But anyway, so I guess the first time I got caught stealing, I was like 11 years old. And I had cut school with some of the neighborhood kids. And we went to the Woolworths to get tools that we would need in order to build our fort that we were building. Because we had a fort that we were building in the neighborhood near this carpet store. And, you know, like we'd take the plastic and the carpet out of the dumpster and we would like create a fort. Like wood and boxes, but we didn't have any like hammers and nails. And instead of like asking somebody for hammers and nails, I get the bright idea that at 11 years old that I'm going to go into this Woolworths and steal a hammer and nails while I'm supposed to be at school, right? And I got two other kids with me, and I go in, and it was raining that day, so I had an umbrella in my hand. So I came up with this clever idea. I'm just going to stuff the head of the hammer into the umbrella and then like stuff it up my sleeve a little, you know, and walk right out. They will never see it, you know, because it was big. It was a hammer. I was little. So I go in there and I do that. And I'm on my way out the door.
How old are you?
And I couldn't have been more than 11. Maybe 10, 11, somewhere around there. I lived on Craig Street at the time, which was like my second house as a child. So anyway, so we're building the fort, you know, we go to get these hammers and nails. I'm on my way out the store thinking I got this brilliant plan to steal the hammer and nails. And this guy, I guess he was the manager of the store, grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and my shoulder, like snatched me up into the air as I was heading towards the door. And he's like, "What do you got there?" And I was like, you know, like I was caught red-handed. Like there was no getting away with it, you know. And I remember sitting there and they were asking me who I was, and I knew my friends were like outside. They probably ran or whatever they did after that. But the cops come. Like they called the cops because I was that young. Like they might have just let me go if I was a regular teenager. But I was like young enough to like, you can't just let this kid walk out of here with no parents around. Kind of young. And my mom had to go up to the store and get me, or he drove me over to drop me off at my, I forget how exactly it played out, man, because I was very disassociated from it when it happened. And I got in trouble. Because I had cut school, and I was stealing in a store, like kind of a big deal. But that was the beginning of like, I didn't get charged with anything. You know, I didn't have to go in front of courts or any of that stuff. Like my dad was still alive. So, or maybe he had just died. Maybe I was acting out. I don't really know. I don't really remember if he was around. But anyway, so like my mom always tried to do right by me, but you know, like I came home, like there was no cops, there was cops, but there wasn't no courts, no fines, no penalties, no punishments, other than my mom, you know, she might have tattled my ass a little. I don't even remember. I disassociated. Once that guy grabbed me by the neck and the collar, like I didn't know how to act. You know what I mean? Like, I was just feeling like, oh shit. Like, like that oh shit feeling. Like, I'm sure I didn't say oh shit, but I had that oh shit feeling. And then just like, was disassociated from it. But what I got from it was, it wasn't that difficult to deal with. And the idea is not necessarily to stop the stealing from the stores, but to do it so that I never get caught, you know. And it was crazy, man. The first time I got caught without cops and without the store knowing, I had stolen from John Wanamaker's 30 Swatch watches. They had them inside one of these glass sliding cabinet things. I guess I was 14 or 15. Yeah, I was like 14 or 15 years old. And they had like this lock on it, but I was able to twist it and bust it off with my hand. And I like stomped on it a little bit and I got it off. And remember, we're kids, so like we'll run, like I ran a lot.
Right.
Like it wasn't a big deal to have to run. So.
Thanks, honey.
So, me and 2 other guys, we stole these Swatch watches. We had a bunch of them. We filled our book bag with them. Emptied all of them out of the cabinet. They were worth like, this is, mid-80s, whatever it was, late 80s. They were worth like $30, $45 a piece, somewhere around there. So they weren't cheap, by no means.
I remember them.
So
some of them were 50 to 100.
I kept a good portion of them, and my friends took some of them. And our plan was we were going to sell them to other kids in the neighborhood. That made sense. And my mom found them in my room. Obviously, I wasn't hiding them good enough. And she's like, "What is this?" And she was like, making a big deal out of it. And she's like, "I'm going to take you up there and you're going to return them and da-da-da-da-da." And I had gotten so scared.
Oh, shit.
She found them. I don't know how she found them. Maybe she knew where my hiding spots were because I was smoking at the time, so I was hiding cigarettes. All this weirdo stuff as a kid. But we got about halfway to the store and she changed her mind. She turned around.
Why?
Shame, maybe? I don't know. She just didn't want to go through with what she thought she should have went through with and probably should have went through with at the time. I was in the car and I was crying about it and I said, "No, I don't want to get in trouble. It wasn't really me." I was trying to blame my friends more than me. And it's kind of sad because my one friend, he was a little older than me, but, like, we were, like, good friends. And when my brother found out about it, he went and, like, grabbed the kid up and, like, choked him up and, like, smacked him around or whatever he did. So, don't you come near my brother again. Like, blaming him, like, because he was older, I guess. I don't know. But I did kind of blame it on the older kid more so than me or the other kid. You know what I mean? But that's what you do. You just, you try not to take responsibility. You blame it on the kid you're with, You're not telling the cops this. You're telling your mother this. It's like, if the cops are there, nobody knew nothing, So, but my brother, like, he was psychopathic at times. And when he heard the story and found out about it, he ran right out and grabbed the kid up and, like, made a big scene out of it and embarrassed the kid in the neighborhood. And kid called me many years later on Facebook. He hit me up and he gave me his number. And,
wow.
And he was talking to me. He says, like, that was really hard for me to deal with after that. Like, it traumatized him.
Wow.
And part of his healing process as a man now was to reach out to me.
Wow.
And I was in a state parole center.
Oh, my God.
It was the last time I've been to jail. So, like, he's on the phone with me. And he's telling me these things. And I had already made the decision to change my life around. This is, But anyway.
What did he say to you?
He said that he told me exactly what happened. And I didn't know because I was like in the house, like not allowed to go out. I was on punishment or whatever. And I didn't go near the kid again because, you know, I didn't know my brother did that. Like, I know my brother had words with different people, but I didn't know my brother had did that until after he did it. Some of the kids in the neighborhood told me about it. And, like, I felt bad about it. I didn't know how to process that. But the only thing I could really do is just stay away from him. Which I did. But I never really looked at the other side of it. Like, but I remember I probably got the messenger still. Because it was in my original account.
Wait,
that I still have. But,
what did he say?
Well, he says something along the lines of, you know, like, I just wanted you to know that it was traumatizing and it affected me for a lot of years. And, you know, like, I was like, damn, man, it's crazy. Like, I would have never known, you know, but, and this is years later he was doing this, I guess, like, therapy that was putting him in a position to do that, you know. But anyway, you know, like, it happened, like, for me to get that information, it happened to me at a real weird time because I was fully awake now. So, like, in the journeys that we take, you know, like the different soul groups, you know, as kids, as teenagers, as young adults, as employees or schoolmates, or, you know, all these different soul journeys that we take with different people, and like what they're supposed to give us in our journey. You know, like, to get that, you know, that text message from him and to deal with that situation. I tried to like reach out to him and like tell him the good stuff that I was involved with, and, you know, I was still in the middle of, like, at the time I was still in the middle of like getting my shit together, and I didn't have a plan yet. You know, I just knew I couldn't do what I always did. And, but once I got on track with stuff, like, I came across the message again, and I wanted to, like, try to connect with him and all, but he never responded. You know, so, what are you going to do? But yeah, so that was crazy. But I think for her, it was just more embarrassment and shame, because, like, if I play the tape hard enough and I try to push past, like, the dissociation part of my behaviors and the aftermath of them, like, I would say, like, I see the same kind of pattern going on in other children when things occur. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I try to assist, because I do understand what that feeling's like when it's your fault and you're being yelled at or you're in trouble, like the disconnection that goes on there. Because I think one of the major problems our society has is that we do not have proper repercussions for people and their actions during their formative years.
Right.
And it creates a lot of fucking bullshit.
Right.
You know? I don't know. Like, why did I steal? I had anything I ever really needed in life. My mother was always good about providing those things, you know, and, like, you know, she always made sure we had something big or nice for our birthdays and Christmases, you know. Christmas, I always had a lot of toys under the tree. But, you know, like, she would take the time throughout the year to, like, buy something and stash it away, buy something else and stash it away, you know, like, she was very thrifty when it came to that sort of thing. But there was no shortage of her spending money. She just did it a different kind of way over a long period of time. She didn't wait till, like, November to buy something, you know, like, and there was always a lot of shit under the tree, you know.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff had big ticket items to it, you know, like computers and stereos and, you know, cool stereos. I had nice stuff, man, when I was a kid. I had nice stuff most of my life when I was under her roof and she was in charge of taking care of me, which was still about my mid to late 20s. Yeah, I had nice stuff, you know. But I worked jobs and stuff and bought nice stuff for myself, but, you know.
But you were saying, like, why did you steal?
yeah, I can't really put a finger on it. Like I told you, I tried to like research it in my mind. Did it have something to do with my dad in that day? Like, or was I like thrashing out at the system because my dad used to be a part of that, or was a part of it, and I blamed, like even like subconsciously as a child, I blamed my dad's alcoholism on his profession. He was still employed as a detective at the time, when I was young, when I started stealing. And that was a man that when I went around him, the first place we would go is a toy store. Like what he couldn't give me in alcohol, he tried to give, not in alcohol, but in presence, like being a full-time dad. What he couldn't give me in that respect, he tried to buy back from me with toys and spoiling and taking me places and get me whatever I wanted, pizza, ice cream,
Right. And so what does that teach you at that age?
It didn't teach me anything. It didn't teach me anything. It gave me like a behavioral pattern of like wanting better things and like not having to do anything really hard to earn them. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that might probably feed into it a little bit there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean I really think reward based is better. Than just giving somebody something because of the way the parent feels about the situation.
Right. Like it should be earned. Yeah.
But he did teach me good stuff, like planting and growing stuff and harvesting vegetables and stuff. He taught me that kind of stuff. And he lived in the ghetto. He had his own tomato plants. You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of people could say that, but,
were there ever any, like, overt discussions about morality growing up for you?
I don't know. I mean, other than what we recited over and over in Boy Scouts, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, you knew what right and wrong was. Wrong was, taking something that didn't belong to you. It wasn't right. But I always had this, like, thought in my head that it didn't really matter because there wasn't no, like, victim at the other end of it. You know what I mean? So the first time I got caught up with some, like, situations where there was victims, I was 18, 19 years old, and I just moved to Delaware County, and the boss I had was, like, a decade older than me. And he was cool, man. Like, he smoked pot with me and doing other drugs and shit. I had a car, so he kind of relied on me because he didn't. And he would have me drive him around in different places for different reasons. Everything from selling or buying drugs to, robbing people's houses. That's how I got my felonies. It's kind of messed up in a lot of ways because I don't like victim crimes, like, but I will say this, I guess I was like 16, we were at this trailer park in Jersey, and I was with my best friend at the time, and we were sneaking alcohol and cigarettes in our bags, and we had a bottle of rum or something, vodka, rum, I don't know, that we stole from one of our parents. It might have been him that stole it from his parent because I couldn't get one for mine or something, I don't know. But either way, we both wanted to do that. And before we left, my mom unzipped our bags right in front of us, like before we got into the car. And she found a bottle of alcohol. Like, she rummaged through our bags to make sure we weren't doing anything wrong.
Your poor mom.
And she found this bottle of alcohol, and she's like, what the hell? So she turns around and, leaves the bottle of alcohol and tells us to get our asses in the car. And now it's like, uh-oh. first off, we're not going to be able to get anything we're trying to get there. And she just took what we were going to take there. So we got there and we forged this plan. Since we got there a couple days before 4th of July, it was a mobile home campground. You know, all mobile homes. You know what that is, right? And me and him went, well, we'll just go and steal other people's liquor, man, and we'll stash some away.
Wow.
And we did. We popped a couple of the locks on some of the trailers, and we went in, and we took out bottles of alcohol.
Oh, no.
We found smoke bombs and fireworks at one of them. And we're like, oh, my goodness, we're going to have a blast. We're going to throw a big party. We're going to throw a big party and have all the kids from the mobile home park come to it on 4th of July. You know, like, we weren't really thinking clearly. And the first one, once we had found a bottle of alcohol, right, which was like either the first or second lock we opened, right?
Wow.
We found a liquor cabinet. So it was like, we get the trash bags out of the kitchen drawer, and we're just throwing stuff all over the place, like looking for these things. And it's very disrespectful, very violating for the people involved, I'm sure. Well, we ended up getting a canoe, because now we need a canoe to paddle out to this island so that we can stash all the alcohol so that no one finds any of this stuff. So we did that. We broke into like 8 mobile trailers, drunk as shit that night. And we had 3 trash bags filled with alcohol. We had more alcohol than anybody could have ever possibly have drinking. But it was like, you know, like it was getting crazy. It was getting crazier and crazier as we got drunker and drunker. You understand what I'm saying? And there was nobody in our way. The whole place was empty. That actually was our downfall. Because when people started showing up from their holiday vacation, you know, for their holiday vacation, they started realizing that their trailers were all broken into. And most of them were coming down there for weekends or whatever. And of course, we got there in the middle of the week, you know, and we were there for the weekend. And then we were going to leave the following, you know, after the holiday during a weekday. But there's people that just go to those places just for weekends. Well, they started showing up, and it was the next day, basically. We had New Jersey State Police and New Jersey cops for that township standing in front of us, like, and we're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, you know. And they're like, oh, you don't? Okay, we'll figure this out. So they took me and they put me in the cop car. And one of the troopers or detectives gets in the car and sits next to me, and they got my friend sitting out on the bumper.
Right. Separation.
Separation. You know, this is what they do. But we're old enough and smart enough and been through enough to know that that's what they're doing. So they got me in the car, him out of the car, and this guy's trying to tell me that he just told them out there that we did these things. And I said, no, he didn't say that, because we didn't do these things. Like, I know he wasn't saying that. Like, you know, like, that's not happening. And they had us both out now, right? And they're asking both of us together, like, look, guys, these are the only 2 kids here. Like, it's not going to be that bad. It's not that big of a deal. Like, we know you did it. It's going to be bad if you do not produce the stuff and, like, come clean, you know? So we told him everything, you know, like, and that's just, but they were trying to convince me he was out there telling on me, and I said, nah, he ain't telling on nothing, because we didn't do nothing. So, you know, this whole, like, song and dance with these cops, like, it got to the point where I was, like, walking away from them and flagging them and stuff, and my mom was yelling, and, you know, it was just craziness. Like, I was really cocky and arrogant. But again, like, was I thinking about those people coming to their property and, like, the damage I was doing to their stuff at the time? No, or the things I was stealing. No, I wasn't thinking of them. I was thinking of me and my friend and us having alcohol for other teenagers that were coming. We were going to have a party, like, and, like, this would have never happened. Like, this is what I say, like, after I came, and the circus between us and the cops that day went on for about an hour. And the cops are getting upset because, like, they know, like, they just knew, like, there was no getting around it, you know? And we took them to where the canoe was and told them we used the canoe to take all the stuff over there to the island in the middle of the lake. And they were like shaking their heads like these guys were like really planning to have like a big fiasco here, you know? And it never happened. You know, we ended up going home the next day, and George was furious. You know, he was furious because he had spent a lot of money to have that campground and have that, you know, mobile home on that campground for our vacations and stuff. So I like totally ruined a lot of shit and put like huge ass
right
axe down between him and my mom, which, you know, I'm sure it affected and rocked their relationship a little bit. And, you know, you don't think about that kind of stuff when you're self-centered and you're young and dumb. So, like, you know.
So, like, why did you continue stealing after you received negative consequences?
Well, I kind of came up with some parameters and some rules. Like, I wasn't going to steal from people, and I wasn't going to, you know, harm anybody, you know. I never really did. I mean, I was involved with fights and stuff, but there was always, people were doing it to me, I had to do it back to them kind of thing. It was never like I went out and initiated. Listen, I had a couple instances in my whole life where I was physical towards somebody first. And, you know, like, but it was always like people that I knew I couldn't beat up. Like, it was almost like I would challenge them or something, you know, like, I don't know, it's weird, it's hard to describe, but I will say this, with all that going on, right, I didn't receive a whole lot of consequences, you know, like, so when the boss guy in my early 20s, or late teens it was, I'm sorry, I was 18, 19 years old when this happened. This is when it all switched up, because it was like I had to really start paying attention to what I was doing. I was going to college, and I lost that, Penn State. I lost that because of the guy with the burglaries, you know. And I really was like I said to myself, I guess I'm just going to have to be a criminal for the rest of my life, and like really, really like fit the bill for it. But I changed it up. I said, I'm not going to steal from people anymore. It's just going to be stores. It's just going to be this. It's just going to be that. It's not going to be people. No people. And if you look at my rap sheet from that moment forward, that's exactly what I had. You know what I mean? Like, it's all petty thefts or retail thefts and drug possessions or DUIs or whatever. You know, but there's always stuff like that. Never anything towards anyone. You know, and that was like the beginning of some semblance to thinking outside of myself, I think. You know, like, was it good that I was really smart and was involved with a lot of extracurricular stuff as a child and a teen? Like, went to great schools and had great opportunities and educations and lots of supporting hobbies and, you know, Boy Scouts and karate and Cub Scouts and baseball and, you know, whatever I wanted, you know.
Why did you think that stealing from a store was victimless? Just because you couldn't see them?
Because they were companies. They're not people. It's
but
different.
Like, I remember when I was living in San Francisco, they would, like, close down Walgreens because there was so much fucking theft. And I'd be really pissed off because I was like, I, as a paying customer, really liked having that Walgreens in my neighborhood. And I was really annoyed when the ones would shut down because of people like you.
Yeah.
I was really mad about that.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was, you know, I had built a routine with my kids or whatever, you know, with them.
Well, there's a combination of something else too. It wasn't just those self-centered type of dispositions. It was that I was getting high, and I needed to keep feeding that hole. You know what I mean? So that didn't help much either. Of course, getting high cost me everything from jobs, my freedom, girlfriends, family members, friends that weren't getting high. You know, there's a couple of guys that I was hanging around with that were like all-stars like me in life when it came to school or extracurricular activities. And like they wouldn't want to go near me because they were afraid what might happen. You know, and like that made sense to me now, but it didn't make sense then. So I just gravitated more towards people that were more likely to do the things that we needed to do in order to get one more. You know, that's what drugs does to you. You know, like that repetition, you know, and like not having access to money or losing my job or, you know, just being involved with drugs in general that would take that money, all that money, and want more money, you know, in order to continue. Like that's, right. You know, that was pretty bad. I mean, like towards the end of my thieving career, you know, like was right around the time of the birth of my daughter, and shortly thereafter, I had stopped, and I kind of like put my foot down that I wasn't going to do any of that anymore. And it was easy to make that decision because I was not getting high. You know, I was putting together periods of time of sobriety and clean time, you know, and I was being more of like a family man, a father. What happened is that we would relapse and get high, and then stealing became an option again, you know, and it was always retail thefts, you know, always pharmacies, stuff like that, you know. In Philadelphia in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot of bodegas that would take stolen merchandise, and it's very well known, everything from Infamil to batteries and stuff. So I was one of the kids that was running around and like going into these stores and filling up a basket of Infamil and running out the door with it because each can was worth $5.
Dude.
And if I had 20 cans in there.
That's another thing. So I would go to Walgreens to get like infant fucking formula so I could like feed my kid because my like old lady boobs weren't working and shit. I'm like, you know, try to get insulin for like my diabetic dog who has like 1/500 chance of getting fucking diabetes. And like I just wanted to buy the insulin over the counter because I don't have pet insurance to cover it. And now the Walgreens is closed.
Yeah, or there's no Infamil on the shelf because John and his crew came through and emptied that shelf.
And that was like the
like,
organic brand that I kept going to.
No,
to
I don't.
My child.
It wasn't your brand. It wasn't you. Okay, this was years before that.
I'm just
what I'm saying to you is that, like doing those kind of things, that's how I fed my habits. But I had a black market place to take them to. More than one. There were several. You know, and then I did other things to try to make money. I would drive all the way down to South Carolina and buy fireworks, drive them all the way back to Pennsylvania and sell them to the bodegas. I would go over the bridge to Jersey and buy cigarettes, or down south and buy cigarettes, bring them back and sell them to the bodegas. Over the bridge was for alcohol. We'd go over the bridge and buy alcohol and bring it back and sell it to the bodegas. You know, and everybody was coming up with different hustles. I mean, you know, most of the kids I hung around with were thieves. You know, I mean, not when I say kids, I mean, you know, grown adults, you know, that were getting high with me. But we were all still kids. You know, we had a mentality of self-centeredness and, you know, fixation on drugs, and, you know, every day had to be a party. Every day had to be a party, man. There's no waking up and being responsible. You know, there's no, like, doing what has to be done. It's just every day's a party. Every day's a party. Yeah.
Why does every day have to be a party in that mentality?
I don't know. I guess maybe because I had so much potential and I had screwed up my life so bad so many times, and in and out of jail systems, and, you know, no real root to hold me down. You know, and then after having a child, You know, that all changed, but it didn't fully change me from the pain and the suffering that I felt from the guilt of my life, you know, and the shame and, you know, all that other stuff, you know. So getting high is, you know, crack cocaine was like, it was the answer, it was the solution, it was the coping mechanism, it was the celebratory event, it was, you know, how to answer my anger, how to answer my fear, how to answer my happiness. Like, just not being able to feel right without having that. I don't know. I mean, it's a vicious drug. I relapsing and, you know, sneaking around to do it and, like, you know, selling everything you got. Like, craziness. Total craziness. And, like, not that it's any worse than any other drug. I mean, they all have their damaging effects, but, you know, like, it wasn't uncommon for me when I was involved with retail thefts and stuff. It wasn't uncommon for me to do, you know, 10 or 15 a week. You know? Like, somebody would say something like, well, what would you have done if, you know...
10 or 15 a week? What do you mean by that? Is that the
10 or
unit?
15 stores.
Oh, jeez.
Jobs. I would call them jobs. So I had a crew that would go around and do that with me, you know, like a couple a day, you know, just to feed our habits. You know, a lot of my friends were using needles, and I wasn't. I was just smoking crack. I ended up using needles later on, but, you know, the crack, man, that was a hungry beast. And you'd spend it so fast and be gone. Hundreds of dollars in just a matter of hours. You know? It could be like that for anything, though. Gambling, pornography. You know, I've had people around me working in this field, man, that you know, they've done the same thing with that dopamine rush that they're looking for. That flooding of the sensors. You know, learning a lot about it helped me. You know, if someone would have told me when I was a teenager, hey, listen, man, you might not want to smoke pot until you're like 20, 21, 22. Not that you can't smoke pot, but you shouldn't really do it now. You should wait.
Right.
Because,
let the brain develop.
Maybe you shouldn't drink every weekend.
Right.
Like, because your friends are doing it, you know, you're drinking every weekend, like, you know, like, maybe you should wait until you're like 20, 21. And if they would have said behind, because they were saying that, but it didn't make no sense to me because that shit wasn't working in my life. You know, if they would have followed that up with, because, not because of jails, because I wasn't worried about that, obviously. Not because you'll lose your family and friends, I wasn't worried about that. But if they would have told me, the self-centered asshole that I was, a lot of times, in my thought processes, in my agendas, if they would have told me, hey, listen, if you don't, then you'll be more emotionally adjusted and be able to handle things in life better. And you'll be able to do those things, and it won't affect your life in a negative way. If they would have said that to me, I might have waited until I was 20, 21 to smoke my first joint or drink my first beer. But I was doing that shit since I was 13, 14 years old, man. Hanging out with all the older kids in the neighborhood. And, you know.
Let's go back to the guilt and shame. So why did you just immediately assume at that time that, like, there was no going back, like, to another path for yourself?
Well, you know, because I would find, like, a good job, and as soon as, like, I would have something good going in my life, I would sabotage myself with a relapse.
So, but yes,
like,
so why would you do
there was
that?
a term that was being thrown around in my words and other people's words about me, people in the clinical field, self-sabotage. I was self-sabotage.
Why?
I don't know. Somewhere along the line, I didn't want to be successful with it. I didn't want to be an achiever inside of this system, even though I was. I think it was deep-rooted, man. And it hasn't really been balanced out and corrected until I made a decision to leave the system and do it properly. Like, that's all part of the recovery from the system.
Wow.
You know, it's deep-rooted shadow work. Like, knowing those things about yourself. You know, like,
Right.
I don't harm others today, directly or indirectly. I used to indirectly harm people, even though I claimed openly that I'm not directly hurting nobody. That was not necessarily true. I definitely cost my mother a lot of sleepless nights. She probably slept better when I was incarcerated. You know what I'm saying?
That's so sad.
That is sad. You know?
That's so sad.
But it wasn't like the whole time. It was like, you know, periods of like going off on these deep ends with the harder drugs and then stopping and getting it together, or getting in trouble and having to stop and then getting it together, and, you know. But the one thing that I really think like pushed me into crack cocaine the deepest was when I was in my early 20s, like 20, 21, that's when it was really kicking in, right? I had tried it, but it was really kicking in around then. And I'm going to say this, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but because I was on probation and parole, I wasn't able to smoke pot anymore. And instead of smoking pot, I used drugs that would get out of my system faster. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes
Does that
me
make sense?
Yes,
though?
but it makes me think about like how much of this is like engineered. Like that thought pattern is not unique to you.
Oh, and I know it's not. I know it's not.
Like it's almost like they designed it that way so that people would think that they came up with that thought pattern.
Well, also, like, systematically, what has gone on in the decades that I'm talking about. Okay, so you had criminal justice systems where, like, people went to jail. You had rehabs, but they weren't really that popular. And then there was this big boom in the late 90s, 2000s, where, like, the drugs were a problem. And by, 2000, like, there was rehabs all over the place. And it was a big booming industry. It wasn't going nowhere.
Right.
And then, you get towards...
Sick.
Well, you get towards, 2005, 2010, and the crossover becomes medication and facilities like that, and medications, facilities, like outpatients, and hold on, I'm missing something here. Oh, medication-assisted treatments, which is other drugs that they give to you, like everybody knew about methadone. Right? But there was prescription pills, okay? And I had, there was times where I had, like, got my act together and was, like, doing good. Like, walked away from drugs for a while. And then I got hurt on the job or in a car accident or whatever. And then had to start taking prescription pills.
Right.
And then, like, and I didn't like being drowsy and down all the time, so I would take the crack to bring me back up. You know what I mean? And I would get trapped in these cycles, and it was like vicious. It was vicious. Like the opioid,
That's so sad.
the opioid epidemic, when it came to painkillers, did something different for people like me that had my disposition, because it would push me into the drug world deeper, and criminal lifestyle choices deeper. Now I'm selling pills, and I'm, to my friends, or I'm trading pills, or, so that I can get other drugs. I would get my prescription bottle, and I'd have 120 pills in there, and 20 of them I would sell right from the door so that I could buy other kinds of drugs. Does that even make sense? It was like a commodity to me. But, like all that stuff, right? So, the end of my road was, like, I was very hopeless. Very, very hopeless. And I felt like, I wanted to slip away, and I had, and that didn't stop me. Dying twice. That didn't stop me. And You know, like the last time I got picked up and they found me, I was in Kensington and I was smoking crack in an alley where people literally were camping out a year ago and nobody said nothing to them. But when I was there doing it, it was like 2014. I was homeless and running around and staying in some recovery house or something. And like when they got me, I had relapsed that time because I was feeling physical pain so bad. I was taking like 3,000 milligrams of ibuprofen every day. And I knew that I was going to either have liver failure or I was going to have to go get a bag of dope.
Damn.
And I went to get the bag of dope, and I just didn't like the way the dope made me feel, but it did take the pain away, so I wanted to come back up. And of course, I went to my go-to, which was crack. So they caught me in this like little shuffle alley like type deal. And, you know, like I didn't run. I just stood there. Like, I don't even care. I want to go to jail. I want to end this. You know, like going to jail ends it for a while.
Right.
You know, like a lot of my sobriety time would start out with me being in a jail cell first.
Right.
Having enough time away from it to recognize that the behaviors and what I was doing was wrong and like I need to do better for myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like coming out with that gung-ho feeling that I'm not going to do it this time.
Right.
And it wasn't like that the first couple times. It was like I got high the next day as soon as I got out. But towards the middle to later part of my life, it was, I don't want to do that shit anymore. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom and my access to my family and all that. And then when I found out when I was incarcerated that I had a daughter, yeah, and that like changed everything for me, you know. So I came out that time with a real big plan. We were going to move to Florida, and she's got a video up online. You can watch it. She talks about it a little bit in her video.
I want to watch it for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, like I say that because, you know, like there's like this thing that was going on through the whole process of me getting to that suicidal point, you know, 10 years after that, you know. So when I got to that, like when they caught me in that alley in 2015, whatever it was, 2014, 15, I had warrants for my arrest. I was getting charged with possession, so that wasn't going to go well with my probation and parole or whatever. And when I got back in front of judges, you know, like I was playing all the cards of the system, and they sent me upstate. You know, like I came out of state prison with a whole new attitude. But I had 3 open cases at that time. I had possessions in Philly, I had retail theft in Bucks County, and I had retail theft in Delaware County. So like I was also going on tour to all these places, you know. And I had been on tour before. It was no big deal, you know. Done that before. Every time you leave one jail system and go to another, you know you're getting closer to the gate to go home, you know. But when I got out that time, man, it was different. It was a lot different because I had experiences in state prison, you know. I had experiences where it was just like I knew that everything was wrong, and especially me. You know, I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I had to do something totally different. And I remember laying on my cot and having this mantra, and I would say it when I woke up and I would say it when I went to sleep. Now, I had it written down in my state prison book that I'm going to follow your will for my life, no matter what, by any and all means necessary.
Wow.
And actually, that's it. I would say, dear God, I'm going to follow your will in my life by any and all means necessary. That's when I wrote that testimony.
Wow.
That I got hanging up, that I've
Yeah.
showed you.
Yes.
You know, I said, I'm not going to do it no more. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that. And I stuck by that.
But you did drugs when you had a child.
No, this is all after that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is the last time,
Okay.
2014.
Why did you have drugs when you had a child?
I had lost her.
But
Yeah, I lost her. I had already lost her.
No, but I'm asking, why, as a parent, why would you do that to a child?
I didn't think I was doing anything to her at all. I really didn't think it had anything to do with her. It had everything to do with me and what I was doing wrong. You know, like, was there food in the fridge? Were they around good people? Yes. Did I go to their school events and encourage them and try to emotionally develop them correctly? Yeah, I did my best. You know, but I wasn't present all the time because of relapses or prescription pills or whatever, you know. When we were living down in Florida, we did really well for a while, and then we started getting around the wrong people again, and that was our invitation to our downfall. Shit fell apart there, and we ended up going back up to Pennsylvania, and you know, we buckled down and tried to get it all straightened out, but of course we wanted to play around here and there. We thought if we both agreed to it and we both, you know, tried to keep a cap on it, you know, it made it extracurricular, you know, weekend warrior kind of thing, that it wouldn't turn into anything worse than that. And we were in agreement with that in a lot of ways, but I didn't like the drug she did, and she didn't like the drug I did. My drug was crack, and her drug was heroin. And we both traded drugs often, you know, but they were our drugs of choices. You know, hers was that, and mine was crack. And, you know, it just took us down bad roads, man. You know, like as far as what the end result was. You know, like, because we did try to keep a decent house, a neat house. They had plenty of gifts on Christmases and stuff like that, you know. They always had good food. I cooked a lot. I like cooking. And, you know, they were involved with their friends. They had activities. They were involved with that. You know, and they did well in school. And, like, you just don't really think you're doing anything wrong if you're not, like, going to jail. In my case, that's how I viewed it. If I wasn't getting caught and going to jail doing something, I'm okay, you know. Which really didn't add up in the end because I ended up going to jail after I lost them and all. You know. But when we lost the kids, man, it really set her off, which in turn set me off. You know, but we were planning on getting out. We were going to move back down to Florida before they ended up, you know, before that all happened. We were going to go. So, it didn't happen. But I think that some of us have karmic duty in certain locations, geographically, with certain souls. And the only way we're going to work that out is if we're in that location. So, like, even if I could have bounced to Florida, which I kept trying to do all the time, which is very odd, they were meant to be here, entangled in whatever karmic relationships they have going on here in the attempts to work those debts out from previous lifetimes. You know, like, this is all cumulative. You know, it's not like you're going to be presented with what you're supposed to be presented with in this lifetime, and it's going to be up to you and how you're going to act and choose. Now, maybe people don't know that, but when you do know that, it explains why, for someone like me, it explains why I did all the things I did, the way that I did them, and was subjected to all the things I was subjected to, and went through all the things I went through. You know, I mean, that was really the main reason. I mean, I wanted to help people, and I knew helping people was helping me. That was the conclusion I came to. That's why I've been so successful for the past 10 plus years, is because I spent most of my time helping people, and it helped me. So I say that to say this. When I helped people, it helped me. It kept me on a different conscious level. Okay? And that just grew like wildfire within me, like a fire that needed to be fed. Very grateful to come to that conclusion, you know, and it was my near-death experiences that gave me that conclusion. The one near-death experience was I was a selfish prick, and I wasn't living right, and I wasn't connected to anyone. Well, I don't know how selfish I was. I say that, but, you know, like to get high in itself and put yourself, you know, into a harm's way, self-induced harm's way, like a suicide attempt type situation. Because when you were using drugs the way most of the people that end up using them, like how I used them, like, you know, every time you do it, it's a chance. Especially when you're, you know, overdosing all the time, people are bringing you back. You know, fentanyl wasn't a big thing at the time, but it was starting to become a big thing. So you didn't know if you were getting heroin or fentanyl, and if you got too much fentanyl and not enough heroin, you could overdose, and that happened. You know, people, they didn't have Narcans and stuff like that. You know, but people brought you back, and then they did have Narcan. You know, people brought you back. You know, but I had those two near-death experiences. The one, they were about a year, maybe a little more than a year apart. And the difference between the first one and the second one was the first one, I was helping people, and I was living in that recovery house, and, you know, like all these things, you know, and I saw beautiful things over there, you know, and I was given a gift, you know. But the second time I overdosed, I wasn't helping anybody. I felt like I couldn't help nobody, you know, and like I didn't get connected or bother with people, or, you know, I wasn't really that selfish, but I was still being selfish, and I was at a real low point with like vibration and energy, and it was just total darkness over there, and I could just feel it, and I was all alone, and I vowed that I never wanted to feel that again, you know. And then having that time in state prison, I was able to put the two together, like really take a good look and examine inner self work, like wow, like. So helping people, not only was it being successful in my recovery of staying away from all that crap, right? It was helping me to do that, right? I realized that, but it was also putting me in a vibrational state where I was similar to the first near-death experience. So things would end up good if something were to happen to me. I wouldn't go to the darkness that I had experienced the second time.
Right.
That darkness the second time, I don't want to be there, man. Like, and I've been alone. I've been inside jail cells and freezing and hungry and detoxing and puking on myself. And I felt the worst things you could possibly feel and imagine to feel in this physical realm. So, like, to be in that physical realm, I mean, that ethereal realm, and to feel worse than that because of the loneliness and the darkness. Like, that says a lot. You know what I mean? So it kind of like, yeah, and it didn't stop me from getting high at that particular moment, but when I did get jammed up and went to jail and went upstate and all that and had this reflection time, and like I came out, I said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to help people by, you know, and that was the mantra. I'm going to help people by any and all means necessary, no matter what. You know, and I did that.
You are doing that.
So, well, yeah, I still continue to do that. I've added animals and children to that list, not just drug addicts. Well, hold on. Let me go back. So this is the transgression of that, right? Because helping people, what does that look like, right? For someone like me, it's insane. I'm totally insane, right? It was helping other addicts. And then it was helping other addicts and the organizations that helped other addicts. And then it was helping other addicts and helping those in those organizations and those organizations to help addicts, right? And then it was going to school while I was doing all that.
Wow.
Right? For the purpose of being able to go and get a job and get a paycheck to help addicts while I'm helping other addicts. And then it became I was helping the students that were around me because of my experience in life. All my experiences, you know, the jail systems, the rehabs, being on that side of the fence, you know, and all the different possibilities that come from it. You know, so I turn around and I'm helping my classmates. I'm helping my teachers. I'm helping program directors of the, you know, the educational thing that I was involved with. And I'm helping addicts and organizations and the people that run those organizations, right? And in turn, I'm helping my community a little bit, right? So then I get the job. Now I'm helping addicts, right? Those organizations still, the people that those organizations help, and the workers and owners and operators of those organizations, and and the addicts they help, right? And I'm helping classmates still, because some of them are actually now my co-workers. And it turned into, now I'm helping the directors and the doctors inside these facilities. And the levels of care that I dealt with went from intensive detoxes and rehab in the inner city, the lowest of the lowest class of financial ability and help available, to revolving door people that were just constantly doing it. That level to, you know, not a high end, but a medium to low end psychiatric facility with an entirely different class of level of cares. And that was the first time I was actually able to help kids a little bit too, because I would work those units as well as the men's, the women, the co-eds, you know, they had so many different kinds of programs going, and the intensities of the cares.
How old are the kids?
They had kids in Fairmount. They had kids that ranged from the age of 12 through, you know, some of them were 18, 19 in there, you know.
12.
But, you know, like, so I'm getting the opportunity to help all those people. But also, in the meantime, I also...
We have a cat interruption. I usually view it when that happens as like a fortuitous...
She always has a lot to say.
Fortuitous sign, confirmation.
Yeah, so helping all those people, and then helping the people that help those people, you know, to help other people. Like, that's the levels I climbed up the ladder to help other people and to practice the principle of care. That's the ladder I climbed.
I love and respect and admire you.
And even operate my own recovery house, you know, like... You know, like it increased the amount of people that I was reaching, you know, other houses and other organizations and other types of organizations. And then, like, how about this one? Like probation and parole officers, including one of the ones I've had in my lifetime. Oof. Like, talk about crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about crazy. How about this? How about one of the guys in my housing was on probation and parole? And I had a situation where I was dealing with his probation officer, but for some reason I had to talk to his supervisor. And his supervisor gets on the phone, and guess what? That was my PO for almost 20 years, off and on.
Wow.
He's now a supervisor and doing very well for himself, you know? So it's like all those different people, all those different situations.
Right.
Cracks in the foundation. Cracks in the foundation.
At the heart of it is we want to teach kids to live in harmony with nature, to teach kids things that they're not going to learn in mainstream schools, like morality, emotional intelligence, permaculture.
Some real life superheroes out there. I met a few.
With the light and the true do.
Heroes have been lost, not found. And here we are, in desperate need of one.
I was the thief, hands full of lies. Took what I wanted, no need for the why. Truth was a whisper, pain was a game, but the mirror don't crack without saying your name. Used to run the streets, my heart was as cold as the winter. Played the game for keeps, a sinner, bombs in a splinter. Now I rise up strong, no more living in the gutter. Found a light inside, no more living with the shutter. Watch me transform from the darkness to the dawn. All my past mistakes now are just lessons I've drawn. I'm the voice of pain, but now I'm here to preach the truth. From a rebel to a saint, I'm a soul in the booth. I'm rising from the ashes, turning on the right. Once a sinner in the night, now I'm shining bright. Too near death's behind me, one chance ahead. The day I chose kid was the day I played dead.
I bled in the silence, I broke in the dark. The system, the cage, a cold metal spark. Two mere deaths behind me, one chance ahead. The day I chose kid was the day I played dead.
Peel back the layers, find the right. Dig through the trauma this world forgot. I wasn't poor, I was starved for truth. And it took a fall to remember my roots.
I was defeat, but I'm not anymore. Can't crack me open right down with a claw. Stretch, shield, punch. This is the moment I find it. Wait, this is the voice of the one.